Thank you for watching Amir Shakil 5858. I am Amir Budnam. I am thankful to all news resources and also my entire team. Following are the news which have been reported by American, Canadian, European, Asian, African channels and the news agency writers AFP, AP. Now the breaking headlines. Speaker U.S. Congress Mike Johnson under scrutiny by Republican Party. U.S. Senate impeachment process for Homeland Secretary. Russia bombed two Ukraine cities brutally. The world is on edge due to Israel's response about Iranian attack. Mr. Biden wants higher tariffs for Chinese metal products. Navy aircraft near Chinese waters. U.S. sanctions on Venezuela oil. United Arab Emirates under rainwater. UN aid personnel detained by Israeli forces in Gaza. Myanmar opposition leader moved from jail to house. Columbia University and anti-Semitism. On Wall Street, Dow Jones, Nasdaq, S&P 500 all went down. Now the news in detail.
Good evening, I'm Amna Navaz in Kyiv, Ukraine.
And I'm Jeff Bennett. On the News Hour tonight, House Speaker Mike Johnson attempts to pass a critical foreign aid package as the Senate votes to dismiss the impeachment charges against the Homeland Security Secretary.
Tonight from Ukraine, the deadliest Russian strike in weeks in one city, while another continues to endure relentless attacks.
It's really depressing to know that it's happening right now, right here. It's really sad.
And the latest from the Middle East, where tensions remain high as the world waits for Israel's response to Iran's weekend attack.
Major funding for the PBS NewsHour has been provided by
Consumer Cellular, this is Sam. How may I help you? This is a pocket dial. Well, somebody's pocket. Thought I'd let you know that with Consumer Cellular, you get nationwide coverage with no contract. That's kind of our thing. Have a nice day.
A successful business owner sells his company and restores his father's historic jazz club with his son. A Raymond James financial advisor gets to know you, your passions, and the way you bring people together. Life well planned.
the Judy and Peter Bloom Kobler Foundation, upholding freedom by strengthening democracies at home and abroad.
Certified financial planner professionals are proud to support PBS NewsHour. CFP professionals are committed to acting in their clients' best interest. More information at letsmakeaplan.org.
The Walton Family Foundation, working for solutions to protect water during climate change so people and nature can thrive together. Supported by the John D. and Catherine T. MacArthur Foundation, committed to building a more just, verdant, and peaceful world. More information at macfound.org. And with the ongoing support of these institutions. This program was made possible by the Corporation for Public Broadcasting and by contributions to your PBS station from viewers like you. Thank you.
Welcome to the News Hour. Ukraine is reeling tonight from the deadliest Russian strike in weeks. It comes at a critical point in this more than 2-year-old war. But first, a congressional aid package for Ukraine, Israel, and Taiwan took a key step forward today, potentially putting the House Speaker's job in greater jeopardy.
Meantime, the Senate began and quickly ended the first ever impeachment trial of a sitting cabinet official for Homeland Security Secretary Alejandro Mayorkas. Our Lisa Desjardins was there for it all and joins us now. So Lisa, lots to unpack, lots to discuss. Take us through what happened in the Senate chamber today.
It was never going to be a surprise how this ended. Mayorkas was not going to be convicted. That wasn't the question here. But it was a question of how. And here the Senate decided on a party line vote that the articles themselves were unconstitutional. Let me take you through this. Senator Schumer offered at the beginning to have some
In the day's other headlines, President Biden is calling for sharply higher tariffs on Chinese metal products. During a campaign stop in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, he proposed tripling tariffs on Chinese steel and aluminum. The president says he's trying to protect American manufacturers from a flood of cheap imports.
The prices are unfairly low because Chinese steel companies don't need to worry about making a profit because the Chinese government subsidizes them so heavily. They're not competing. They're cheating. And we've seen the damage here in America.
The president also said today that U.S. Steel should remain a, quote, totally American company. The Japanese firm Nippon Steel has bid more than $14 billion for the manufacturer in a deal the president has opposed. Meantime, the Navy flew a patrol aircraft over the Taiwan Strait just a day after U.S. and Chinese defense chiefs held talks for the first time since 2022. China claims it has jurisdiction over the strait, which runs west of Taiwan. The U.S. says it's an international waterway. The American fleet said the mission, quote, demonstrates the United States' commitment to a free and open Indo-Pacific. China scrambled fighter jets to monitor the U.S. plane's passage. The Biden administration is reimposing sanctions on Venezuela's oil sector. The U.S. had granted Nicolas Maduro's government relief from such measures back in October after it agreed to hold free and fair elections this year. But today, the U.S. State Department criticized Maduro, saying his government had, quote, harassed and intimidated political opponents and unjustly detained numerous political actors and members of civil society. Presidential elections are scheduled for July 28th. Dubai is drying out after the heaviest rainfall the United Arab Emirates has ever recorded. Streets today were still flooded after more than a year's worth of rain fell on the desert nation in just 24 hours. Flights were grounded at Dubai International Airport, that's the world's busiest. Passengers filmed their tarmac completely swamped by the deluge. The United Nations Agency for Palestinian Refugees says Israeli forces abused some of its staff and other people held in Gaza. In a report out today, UNRWA provided detailed accounts of detainees being beaten, attacked by dogs, and deprived of food and water. The State Department called for answers at a press briefing today.
We're deeply concerned by these reports, and we'll continue to press and engage directly with our Israeli partners on the need for a full investigation into these allegations and accountability for any perpetrators.
Israel's military has long maintained that it acts in accordance with international law. It did not respond to a request for comment on these claims. Myanmar's former leader, Aung San Suu Kyi, has been moved from prison to house arrest. The country's military government cited health reasons for the transfer of the 78-year-old as the country endures a severe heat wave. Suu Kyi is serving a 27-year sentence for a variety of criminal convictions. Her supporters say the charges were made up. The Justice Department has agreed to pay $100 million to dozens of Larry Nassar's victims. The settlement was first reported by the Wall Street Journal. It's meant to address the FBI's failure to take accusations of sexual abuse against the former Team USA gymnastics doctor seriously. The total amount paid out from the scandal now tops $1 billion. Actor Hugh Grant says he's received an enormous sum from a British tabloid to settle a lawsuit over illegal spying. The actor has accused the Sun newspaper of tapping his phone and breaking into his home. Grant appeared at London's High Court last year amid a long-running legal battle over hacking claims against Rupert Murdoch's media empire. The Sun's parent company had denied any wrongdoing. Eli Lilly says its weight loss drug Zepbound may help patients with sleep apnea. The pharmaceutical giant cited 2 studies that showed the drug cut irregular breathing episodes by up to 63%. Sleep apnea affects some 20 million Americans. The trial adds to growing evidence that popular drugs like Zepbound, along with Novo Nordisk's Wegovy, have medical benefits beyond their primary purposes. On Wall Street today, stocks slipped across the board. The Dow Jones Industrial Average lost 45 points to close at 37,753. The Nasdaq dropped for the 4th straight session, losing 181 points. The S&P 500 slid 29 points. And former U.S. Senator and Florida Governor Bob Graham has died. The Miami native came to national attention as chairman of the Senate Intelligence Committee following the September 11th terrorist attacks. Graham was an early critic of the war in Iraq that followed. He served 3 terms in the Senate and made an unsuccessful bid for the 2004 Democratic presidential nomination. Bob Graham was 87 years old. Still to come on the NewsHour, the president of Columbia University is thrilled by the House committee investigating rising anti-Semitism on college campuses. Our one-on-one with Iraq's prime minister on his country's partnership with the U.S. and escalating tensions in the Middle East. And a whistleblower testifies that he warned Boeing about safety issues in the assembly of the 787 Dreamliner jet.
This is the PBS NewsHour from WETA Studios in Washington and in the West from the Walter Cronkite School of Journalism at Arizona State University.
Another deadly Russian strike in Ukraine today killed at least 17 people and injured many more, less than 100 miles from the capital city of Kyiv. Anna Navaz continues her reporting tonight from Ukraine and joins us from Kyiv. Anna, it's great to see you. What more do we know about today's strike?
Jeff, officials say that 3 Russian cruise missiles hit the center of this northern town of Chernihiv today. That's just about 65 miles from the Russian border, and that strike occurred at just after 9 o'clock this morning at a very busy time in that city center to actually protect them. The new wrinkle here is the growing concern that in the coming weeks or months ahead, there could be a potential for Russian forces to launch a ground invasion into Kharkiv. That's what residents are worried about right now. Jeff.
All right, Amna Navaz and our team tonight in Kyiv. Amna, thank you.
Thanks, Jeff.
Today, the British and German foreign ministers visited Israel and urged the government to show restraint. But Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said only Israel will decide how to respond to last weekend's unprecedented Iranian missile and drone attack. And Israeli officials have indicated they will respond. Nick Schifrin speaks to experts now about what that action might look like and how it will affect the region. Nick?
For decades, Jeff, Israel and Iran have fought one another in the shadows and through proxies until Saturday night when Iran launched the first ever state Israeli attack. Bali Nasser, Eric Hellman, thanks very much to you both.
Thank you.
When presidents of several top Ivy League schools testified about anti-Semitism on their campuses during a tough House hearing this past winter, the president of Columbia University was traveling and did not attend. Today, though, it was her turn to appear before the committee. She strongly denounced anti-Semitism and hate speech, but as Laura Barone-Lopez reports, some members of the committee felt she had not done nearly enough.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. From the outset, Columbia President Manu Shafiq tried to persuade lawmakers that the university is being more aggressive about Connect's month, this time calling forth public school administrators from California, New York, and Maryland.
The committee stands adjourned.
For the PBS NewsHour, I'm Laura Barone-Lopez.
Iraqi Prime Minister Mohammed Shia al-Sudani is in Washington this week, a trip that was scheduled before the Iranian attack over the weekend that sent hundreds of drones and missiles toward Israel. The sharp increase in Mideast tensions has become a focus of his visit, which we discussed in a wide-ranging interview today. But first, a look at what else is on his agenda, including the future of U.S.-Iraq security cooperation and improving Iraq's economy. Iraq's Prime Minister Mohammed Shia al-Sudani kicked off his Washington visit at the White House, meeting with President Biden on Monday to discuss the status of U.S. forces in Iraq, as well as expanding economic and diplomatic
Committed to maintain it, and at this time, more than at any other time.
Mr. Prime Minister, thank you so much for your time. We appreciate it.
Okay. Thank you.
Boeing has faced intense scrutiny for months, and as our aviation correspondent Miles O'Brien reports, new whistleblower claims were the focus of a congressional hearing today.
Boeing is at a moment of reckoning. It's a moment many years in the making. It is a moment that results not from one incident.
Paul reiterated his invitation to Boeing CEO Dave Calhoun to testify at a later time. Calhoun says he will step down by the end of the year. For the PBS NewsHour, I'm Miles O'Brien.
And join us again here tomorrow night for a look at the rise of the 4-day work week as employers search for new ways to make their businesses more competitive and productive. And that's the NewsHour for tonight. I'm Jeff Bennett.
And from Kyiv, I'm Anna Navaz. On behalf of the entire NewsHour team, thank you for joining us.
Major funding for the PBS NewsHour has been provided.
On this Wednesday night, a break in Canada's biggest gold heist. The U.S. traffic stop that led to a significant discovery and why police believe it was an inside job at Pearson Airport.
They needed people inside Air Canada to facilitate this theft.
The suspects and how police alleged they pulled it off. A rare reprimand in Parliament.
I'm supposed to not participate in any activity that would cause any undue stress.
The contractor who worked on the ArriveCan app summoned to answer questions and reveals RCMP have raided his property. Whistleblower warning. A quality engineer at Boeing says he was harassed and threatened when he raised concerns and says all 787 Dreamliners should be grounded.
I was told, frankly, to shut up.
Lifetime ban. The Toronto Raptor booted from the NBA for betting on games.
Global National with Donna Friesen.
Good evening and thanks for joining us. There has been a break in a case that sounds like the plot of a movie and was the largest gold theft in Canadian history. A year ago, $20 million worth of gold bars and $2 million in cash was stolen from Toronto's Pearson Airport shortly after arriving on a flight from Zurich. Today, police revealed evidence that suggests it was an inside job. Among the 9 suspects identified are 2 men who worked for Air Canada. Eric Sorensen has our top story on how police suspect they did it and what happened to all that gold.
It was an extraordinary and brazen gold heist worthy of a Hollywood script. Exactly 1 year ago, a driver in a van pulled up to Air Canada Cargo, gave a waybill to an employee. A shipment was loaded into the van, which drove away. When Brinks Canada came for the shipment hours later, it was gone. Turns out the waybill was a fake, but the shipment was pure gold.
It had a value of over $20 million, and this particular theft has become the largest gold theft in Canadian history.
Gold and some $2 million in U.S. currency vanished. Police say it was an inside job with outside help, starting with that waybill.
This duplicate air waybill was printed off from a printer within Air Canada Cargo.
Police tracked the van, eventually found it. Revealing few other details, the investigation led to 5 men from the Toronto area being arrested, and a 6th, police say, was the driver arrested in the U.S. Canada-wide warrants have been issued for 3 others. 1 Air Canada employee and a former employee face charges of theft and conspiracy to commit an indictable offense.
In my opinion, they needed people inside Air Canada to facilitate this theft.
It's the kind of criminal enterprise that expands on the original theft, starting with the knowledge that a shipment of gold was being flown by Brinks from 2 Swiss banks in Zurich via Air Canada to Toronto. From there, a criminal assembly line of transporting the gold and diversifying it into multiple ill-gotten gains, into gold jewelry, into money, and significantly, say police, into weapons.
This isn't just about gold, this is about how gold becomes guns.
Police seized melting casts to process the gold, recovered 6 crude gold bracelets worth $90,000, and seized $430,000, likely profits from selling the gold. And the van driver, say U.S. authorities, was stopped in a rental car in Pennsylvania. He tried to run away, say police, when they discovered dozens of firearms believed destined for Canada.
I'm proud to say that we successfully put this international gun trafficking operation out of business. But these criminals thought they were more sophisticated than police. They were wrong.
Every day, organized crime gets away with lucrative operations across international borders. This was more like a Hollywood ending, a win for the good guys. Eric Sorensen, Global News, Toronto.
There was a rare reprimand in the House of Commons today. The man whose company, GC Strategies, was granted the federal contract to create the ArriveCan app was ordered to appear, and he was admonished for refusing to answer questions at a previous committee meeting. That app cost taxpayers about $60 million. Today it was revealed a property belonging to GC Strategies has been raided by the RCMP, and the man who runs it says he has acute mental health problems. Mackenzie Gray on the latest twist in the ArriveCan controversy.
I now ask the Sergeant-at-Arms to admit Mr. Firth at the bar of the House.
It's an interrogation so rare.
On behalf of the House of Commons, I admonish you
that it hasn't happened since 1913. Christian Firth, co-owner of GC Strategies, the company at the heart of the ArriveCan scandal, summoned to the House of Commons after refusing to answer MPs' questions at committee.
I'm supposed to not participate in any activity that would cause any undue stress to myself, as being diagnosed with having acute mental health flare-ups.
That stress undoubtedly added to by an RCMP raid on a property Firth owns just outside of Ottawa.
There was a search warrant, not an arrest warrant, for my property, to obtain electronic goods surrounding the Butler allegations.
Despite the revelation, the government did not ask questions about the raid or ArriveCan, only about Firth's health.
We do not believe that it is appropriate to question Mr. Firth if he is not medically able to participate. We want this to be done in a way that respects the dignity of Parliament.
But the opposition pressed on, pushing Firth on the $19 million his two-person company got for work as a middleman on ArriveCan.
Why did he mislead the committee by answering that question in the negative?
Mr. Firth. Mr. Speaker, at that time I thought I did answer it correctly.
I have a very difficult time accepting that answer and believing that answer to be the truth.
Has the government asked Mr. Firth to repay the money paid to GC Strategies on ArriveCan?
Mr. Firth. Mr. Speaker, no, we have not.
All I can say is, aren't you ashamed?
Mr. Firth. Mr. Speaker, do I have to answer that? Yes, you do. No, I am not ashamed.
The RCMP confirmed the raid on Firth's property to Global News and specifically stated it was not related to ArriveCan. But Donna, a source with direct knowledge, says the warrant is broad, and the RCMP will be able to look at computers and other information seized at the property for a number of potential criminal offenses that they're investigating.
Okay, Mackenzie in Ottawa, thank you. A Boeing engineer told U.S. lawmakers today he was harassed and threatened after he raised serious concerns about the safety of the company's planes. Sam Salapour then went public with his claims, saying he believes assembly flaws in the 787 Dreamliner mean the plane could fall apart and drop to the ground mid-flight, and he says should be grounded immediately. Boeing disputes that, but Salapour doubled down on his claims at a hearing today. Jennifer Johnson reports.
Effectively, they are putting out defective airplanes.
Another Boeing whistleblower sounding the alarm to U.S. lawmakers. Sam Salapour says Boeing's 787 Dreamliner, flown by several airlines including Air Canada and WestJet, has a potentially fatal flaw, gaps in the fuselage, that could cause the aircraft to break apart mid-air.
I have serious concerns about the safety of the 787 and 777 aircraft, and I'm willing to take on professional risk to talk about them.
Salapour, a quality engineer still at Boeing, says he raised concerns about the fuselage gaps over 3 years.
I literally saw people jumping on the pieces of the airplane to get them to align. I call it the Tarzan effect. I was told to shut up. I received physical threats.
Ed Pearson also worked for Boeing and now runs an aviation safety group. He says no one at Boeing has paid the price after 2 fatal MAX 8 crashes overseas and a door plug blowing out on an Alaska Airlines flight in January.
Unless action is taken and leaders are held accountable, every person stepping aboard a Boeing airplane is at risk.
Boeing is defending the 1,100 787s in service, saying we are fully confident in the 787 Dreamliner. These claims about the structural integrity of the 787 are inaccurate. Lawmakers promised more investigative hearings on this, including a future grilling of Boeing CEO.
There are real people at risk, no reason to panic, but a reason for deep concern.
Salapour's attorney says she's heard from over a half dozen other concerned Boeing whistleblowers who haven't come forward. One whistleblower was found dead of an apparent suicide hours after testifying against the aerospace company in March. Jennifer Johnson, Global News, Washington.
Both of Canada's major airlines fly Dreamliners. WestJet has 7 of them and told Global News it maintains full confidence in the safety of its fleet. Air Canada flies 39 Dreamliners. It told us it has a rigorous aircraft safety and maintenance program and ensures its practices remain leading edge. The Prime Minister was in the House of Commons today defending the federal budget. Billions in spending was promised, including funding to boost productivity in Canada, which is in serious trouble. Canada's productivity rate has dropped for the last 13 quarters. That's bad for the economy, bad for wage growth. As Abigail Beeman explains, another major budget measure could be shooting productivity in the foot.
With construction robots, Promise Robotics is at the crossroads of the housing crisis and AI and understands the value in investing in productivity.
What's $1 per square foot you spend, and like a holistic view, and start to look at how this will be monetized over the years, then you've got a pretty good business case to be able to actually invest in your productivity.
But many businesses are hesitant to invest, part of the complex web of declining productivity, with other factors including a large increase in immigration and global tensions.
In Ontario now, people make the same as they make in Alabama. We're falling behind all G7 countries, we're falling behind the United States, and in Finland, they make the same as us. They work less. So they're working smarter.
In an emergency, break the glass? Well, it's time to break the glass.
That's the senior deputy governor of the Bank of Canada in a recent speech, talking about our productivity problem. To explain what it really means, Carolyn Rogers used a very Canadian analogy. The same number of workers working the same number of hours will clear more snow with solid shovels that don't break. They'll be even more productive if given snowblowers. But for the most cleared driveways, invest in snowplows. Budget 2024 promises about $7 billion to boost productivity, the bulk going to AI and research investments. But will it work? Entirely counterproductive to what they're trying to achieve. The business community is frustrated by the new capital gains tax increase because when there's investment hesitancy, new taxes don't help. The government disagrees.
It will support investments in growth and productivity that will pay dividends for years to come.
Surprised, curious, shocked, dismayed people are that they would choose to go down that path.
It's not helpful to necessarily see capital gains taxation at this exact moment.
With some economists, too, questioning the timing of a new tax increase in an era of lagging productivity. Abigail Beeman, Global News, Ottawa.
3 men have been convicted in connection to the border shutdown near Coutts, Alberta in 2022. After 3 hours of deliberation, the jury found each man guilty of mischief over $5,000. They helped coordinate and lead the protest over COVID restrictions that blocked cross-border traffic between Alberta and Montana for 2 weeks. They face up to 10 years in prison. The Toronto Raptors player given the boot, coming up why Jonte Porter got a lifetime ban from the NBA.
Coke Studio, Season 15.
The NBA has given a lifetime ban to Toronto Raptors player Jonte Porter. The league says it found evidence he directly violated its gambling rules by personally betting tens of thousands of dollars on league games while also feeding confidential information to other gamblers. Matthew Bingley breaks down the NBA's findings and Porter's punishment.
The end of the Toronto Raptors season quickly went from bad to worse. The NBA dropping a bomb announcing center Jante Porter is now banned from the league for life, following an investigation into suspected sports betting. The league now alleging Porter disclosed confidential information about his health to someone he knew was a bettor, who then made a wager Porter would underperform in a March game. The NBA also alleges Porter limited his own performance in at least one game to influence the outcome of bets, and placed more than $50,000 worth of bets on at least 13 NBA games using an associate's account. In a statement, the league's commissioner says there's nothing more important than protecting the integrity of the NBA, which is why Jante Porter's blatant violations of our gaming rules are being met with the most severe punishment. The decree came down a short time after Masai Ujiri wrapped up his final news conference, where the Raptors president faced several questions about what he knew.
I don't think anybody saw anything like this coming. All of that is under the NBA's investigation, we go out there and try to do the best due diligence we can.
The team declined any comment following the league's announcement. This is the latest gambling scandal to rock professional sports, which has hit baseball and even hockey, which some say shouldn't come as a complete shock after the expansion of illegal sports gambling.
That, together with ease of access to place bets on different apps, makes it inevitable that we're going to have a higher frequency of issues, and that's precisely what we're seeing.
But Eric Macramala says with so much at stake when it comes to integrity, stiff punishments are doled out for good reason.
We go to games why? Because the outcome ultimately is not predetermined or fixed, and when that comes into question, it undermines the very integrity of the game.
This ban may not affect other professional basketball leagues, but that sports legal analyst points out that now the NBA has identified a major alleged gambling problem. Barring a successful appeal, Porter's professional basketball career is likely over. Donna.
Matthew Bingley in Toronto, thanks. Bring them home. Ahead, families of hostages in Gaza renew pleas to save them. More than 100 people have died in flash flooding near the border of Pakistan and Afghanistan, and Dubai is drying out from record rainfall there. More than a year and a half's worth of rain fell in Dubai in 24 hours. It swamped major roads. It brought Dubai's airport to a standstill. Some passengers have been stranded without a flight for more than a day. The flooding has killed at least 2 people in the United Arab Emirates. In Oman, there were aerial rescues and at least 75 people were saved from being swept away by raging floodwaters, though at least 18 people were killed there. G7 foreign ministers are meeting in Italy discussing new sanctions for Iran after its attack on Israel. Canada's foreign affairs minister joined her counterparts for 3 days of meetings focused on tensions in the Middle East. The G7 leaders are expected to issue a united call for Israel to show restraint after Iran's unprecedented launch of missiles and drones at Israel. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu says his country will make its own decisions on how to retaliate. Iran's president warned the smallest action from Israel would be met with, in his words, a massive response. At the same time, loved ones of hostages still being held in Gaza are trying to remind the world not to forget them. Our Europe Bureau Chief Crystal Gamansi reports.
Ahead of the Jewish holiday celebrating freedom, captivity is the focus of this Seder table.
I can't see myself celebrating the Passover this year. It's like, I think it's going to be cruel, it's going to be unfair. I just can't do it. How can I celebrate when my uncle and 132 of our brothers and sisters are? How can we do it?
It's not known how many of the Hamas hostages are still alive. The long empty table in the heart of London,
bring them home!
A reminder from organizers that the hostages must be freed.
It's a call to please do what you can to help make a deal. Bring them home. It is so important for them to come home.
While community members are here drawing attention to their suffering, Britain's foreign secretary is in Israel.
It's clear the Israelis are making a decision to act, but the real need is to refocus back on Hamas, back on the hostages, back on getting the aid in.
With death, destruction, and imminent famine, the United Nations is appealing for $2.8 billion to help those in the West Bank and Gaza. More aid trucks are getting into Gaza, but it's not enough, and humanitarian groups say they can't get food and supplies to where they're needed most.
It's much bigger than simply, bringing in flour and make few loaves of bread or pita.
Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu rejects international claims of famine in Gaza and reiterated that his country would demonstrate solidarity after Iran's attacks. Crystal Gamansi, Global News, London.
Iran's most powerful regional proxy, Hezbollah, launched missiles and drones at a military facility in northern Israel. At least 14 Israeli soldiers were injured. The Lebanese militant group says that strike was in retaliation for an Israeli attack yesterday that killed 3 of its members. Israel struck back today at Hezbollah targets in southern Lebanon. And a Russian missile attack has killed at least 13 people in the Ukrainian city of Chernihiv. More than 60 people were injured. That strike damaged a number of buildings in the city's downtown. In recent weeks, Russia has been intensifying its attacks on Ukraine, targeting the country's power grid and other critical infrastructure. Tired of after-hours messages from your boss? Next, can the right to disconnect be legislated? The right to disconnect may be something many of us long for. Modern technology has an insidious way of extending the workday, but legislating ways to keep your boss from contacting you after hours isn't simple. Yet a reference to it was included in the latest federal budget, along with, as David Aiken explains, $3.6 million to figure out how to do it.
Emails, texts, direct messages. Our always-on world can be too much when it comes to the workplace, and it's younger workers who have been flagging that as a problem.
I think that this speaks to generations of workers now that are far more literate, thankfully, about mental health and stress than we ever were.
Labor Minister Seamus O'Regan, a Gen Xer born in 1971, has been tapped to rewrite the Canada Labor Code to require federally regulated workplaces to have rules about those digital lines between work and after hours.
I think it's really positive that there's a step towards maintaining that work-life balance because it's so critical when it comes to mental health.
Ultimately, it is nice to be able to know you can disconnect from work,
And if there was some form of legislation in place to make sure that that happens, that'd be fantastic.
Ontario implemented a disconnecting from work policy in 2022, but that policy consists of little more than telling employers they have to have a policy. It only suggests employers come up with their own rules about what sort of circumstances are appropriate for an employee to be contacted by a boss or a client outside of work hours.
Ontario, however, doesn't have much teeth to it. There isn't a punishment if the right to disconnect isn't done or isn't implemented correctly.
Well, Reagan seemed to suggest, though, that the federal government may mirror Ontario's light regulatory touch.
I think the most important thing is workplaces get to determine that themselves, and employers and employees will get to determine that themselves.
As for a timeline to implement the right to disconnect, the government says that's TBD. David Aiken, Global News, Ottawa.
We're going to disconnect. That is Global News for this Wednesday. I'm Donna Friesen. Tonight's Air Canada is this red fox at her pup in Kent County, New Brunswick. Thanks for watching. Hope to see you here again tomorrow. Bye-bye.
The European Union says it will impose new sanctions on Iran after its unprecedented air assault on Israel over the weekend, specifically targeting drone and missile manufacturers. The US House of Representatives will go to a long-awaited vote on aid for Ukraine, Israel, and the Indo-Pacific by Saturday, according to a Republican Speaker Mike Johnson, a move that could provide $95 billion in critical support to the countries. And India is gearing up to start voting in the world's largest ever general election, with nearly 1 billion people eligible to head to the polls across just over 6 weeks. We'll speak to our correspondent in New Delhi to test the temperature as Prime Minister Narendra Modi seeks a third term in power. The European Union says it will impose new sanctions on Iran after its unprecedented air assault on Israel over the weekend, specifically targeting drone and missile manufacturers. After the first day of a summit in Brussels, a statement from the 27-member bloc urged Tehran and its regional proxies to cease all attacks and urged all sides to show restraint. That's after Israel vowed to respond to the onslaught. EU foreign ministers are due to continue the sanctions work on Monday.
Iran has already been the target of several rounds of EU sanctions. They could be set to intensify as members of the bloc agreed to step up penalties at a summit in Brussels. This just days after Iran fired a barrage of missiles and drones at Israel, an attack the EU strongly condemned.
We have decided to put in place sanctions against Iran. It's a clear signal that we want to say. And we also want to do everything to protect the civilians. Each civilian life matters.
The sanctions will target companies involved in drone and missile production in Iran. Several EU states, including Germany and France, are looking at expanding existing sanctions which curb the supply of Iranian drones to Russia to include weapons deliveries to Tehran's proxies in the Middle East. The country has already been slapped with EU penalties over its human rights abuses, the proliferation of weapons of mass destruction, and Tehran's support for Russia's war in Ukraine. The President of the European Council is calling for unity in the bloc against Iran.
We need to be much more vigilant, and we need to cooperate much more. I think we need to bring together the tools we have, the European institutions on the one hand, but also the national authorities on the other hand. And it's a clear signal that we are not naive.
Analysts say Iran is unlikely to face more severe economic punishments, with leaders fearing such a move could boost oil prices, potentially angering top buyer China. The new package of sanctions is set to be announced Thursday.
Well, as the international community voices concern over a potential escalation into a wider regional conflict after Iran's attack, former Israeli Prime Minister Ehud Barak told France 24 he doesn't believe a full-scale war is likely. Take a listen.
Because of the dramatic failure of this high-volume attack, I think that there is no need, no will to go into full-scale war. Israel very probably will respond, very probably on Iranian soil, but in a way, I believe that will be calculated or calibrated in order to avoid it from terrorism into a full-scale war.
Well, Hezbollah says it carried out a drone and missile attack on an Israeli airbase near the border with Lebanon Wednesday, wounding 14 soldiers, some of them seriously. The Iran-backed group says the attack was in retaliation to Israeli drone strikes a day earlier that killed several of its members, including 2 commanders. Later, the Israeli military said its fighter jets struck, quote, terrorist infrastructure in eastern Lebanon. Kenny Knight has the latest on the ongoing escalations across the border.
Ambulances operate side by side with armoured vehicles. Drones and missiles have just hit this military base in northern Israel, an attack launched from Lebanon just a few kilometres away and claimed by Hezbollah. The IDF says 4 civilians were among the wounded.
As a result of the attack, 6 soldiers were severely injured, 2 moderately injured, and 6 others were lightly injured.
In response, the Israeli Air Force says its jets struck Hezbollah infrastructure in eastern Lebanon just north of Baalbek on Wednesday morning, about 100 kilometres from the border. That's on top of 2 other locations it targeted earlier that day in the south, near Nakora and Yoreen. The IDF says it's where Hezbollah fired from, publishing these images of the Air Force's operations. For its part, the militant group says it attacked northern Israel in response to the killing of 3 of its fighters, including a local commander on Lebanese soil on Tuesday. The border is a stage for near-daily exchanges of fire between Israel and Hezbollah, allied with Iran and Hamas. More than 300 people have been killed on the Lebanese side, including dozens of civilians. On the Israeli side, the death toll stands at 18, including soldiers and civilians.
Meanwhile, the United Nations Security Council will vote before the end of this week on the Palestinians' application to become a full UN member state. The Palestinians, who've had observer status at the UN since 2012, have lobbied for years to gain full membership, but repeatedly been blocked by the veto-wielding United States. In this report, Shirley Sitbon takes a look at their struggle for recognition.
Palestine had its first chance to be officially recognized as an independent state in 1947, when the UN voted a partition plan which would have created two states, Israel and Palestine. But Arab states and Palestinian representatives believed the UN's plan was unfair, rejected it, and Israel alone was recognized. The West Bank remained under Jordanian control for 2 decades, with the Arab coalition hoping to defeat Israel militarily and establish a Palestinian state in its place. But this failed, and in 1967, the Six-Day War ended with Israel occupying the Palestinian territories of the West Bank and the Gaza Strip. In the 1970s, the Palestinians turned back to the UN, which declared the PLO, the Palestine Liberation Organization, as the official representative of the Palestinian people. In 1987, the First Intifada, the uprising, pushed the battle for independence to the spotlight.
Neither Arafat nor other person else can stop this intifada. It will continue, wave after wave, till achieving real peace through establishing our independent Palestinian state.
In 1988, the PLO declared the independence of Palestine. 78 countries recognized it that same year. In the 1990s, Israeli and Palestinian negotiators made a breakthrough with the Oslo Accords, but peace talks collapsed by the 2000s as successive Israeli governments cemented their control over the West Bank, building more and more settlements. The idea of recognizing Palestine without a peace deal gained momentum. UNESCO integrated Palestine as a member state in 2011. The following year, Palestine became a UN observer state. 140 of its 193 member states have already recognized it. With the current war in Gaza, new ones said they too will join the movement and recognize Palestine.
The US House of Representatives will go to a long-awaited vote on aid for Ukraine, Israel, and the Indo-Pacific by Saturday, according to Republican Speaker Mike Johnson. The House Appropriations Committee unveiled legislation that provides more than $60 billion to address the conflict in Ukraine, over $26 billion for Israel and US operations in the Middle East, and $8 billion for the Indo-Pacific measure. Johnson said he would give House members 72 hours until midday Saturday to review the bill and offer amendments before a final vote on passage. Democratic support for Johnson's plan is essential, given the slim Republican majority in the House and opposition from his party's far-right flank. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky says his army attacked a large Russian airfield in the north of occupied Crimea, thanking his troops for their accuracy. The attack comes after 17 people were killed and about 60 injured in a Russian missile strike on the Ukrainian city of Chernihiv. Speaking to the European Council via video link Wednesday, Zelensky pleaded for more air defense systems, arguing that Ukraine should enjoy the same cover from aerial attacks as Israel. Here's Ingo Oyotade.
Rescue workers wade through the rubble left in the aftermath of the latest attack to hit Chernihiv. 3 Russian missiles took a tragic toll on lives and infrastructure here. Before emergency teams began searching for survivors, they were desperately trying to save the wounded. Residents have been describing the moments the projectiles hit.
We felt 2 explosions in a row. The smell of smoke reached us. All the windows were blown out. As a result of the stress, I just sat there for almost half an hour before I came to my senses, drank some water, and realized I was alive. Nothing had happened to me.
The city's mayor says more than a dozen buildings, including medical and educational facilities, fell victim to the missiles. Ukrainian authorities believe scenes like this could stop if allies would give the army the weapons it needs to intercept Russian aerial attacks. President Zelensky says his thoughts go out to the victims' families.
I have been receiving reports on the tragedy in Chernihiv. My condolences to all those who lost their loved ones. The rescue operation at the site lasted all day and will continue until we find any survivors who may be under the rubble.
Chernihiv is still reeling from being partially occupied by Russian forces at the start of the invasion. It may have been 2 years since they vacated the region, but clearly their terror is still being felt here.
India is set to start voting in the world's largest ever general election, with nearly 1 billion people eligible to head to the polls across just over 6 weeks. Prime Minister Narendra Modi is seeking a 3rd term in power, and opinion polls suggest an easy victory for his BJP when the results are announced on June 4. But there's a host of opposition candidates seeking to unseat him. Well, for more, we can cross to France 24's Sarah Jacob in New Delhi. Sarah, tell us a little bit about the atmosphere, what it's like where you are, and what the significance of this vote is.
Well, things are certainly heating up here in India, both politically and otherwise, because the world's biggest election has been scheduled somehow in the peak of an horrific Indian summer. And like you said, starting tomorrow for the next month, about 1 billion Indian voters will be eligible to vote in the next government. And the man in the pole position, Prime Minister Narendra Modi, is aiming for a historic, record-breaking, record-equaling 3rd term, a feat that has only been accomplished by one other Prime Minister in India's 77-year history, and that is India's first Prime Minister, Jawaharlal Nehru. So the Prime Minister Modi's BJP is so confident of a victory that they're predicting a mammoth majority victory of 370 seats in a 543-strong parliament. But the opposition says that this is a farcical election. They believe it's not a level playing field, and they point out that many opposition party leaders are actually fighting this election, or having to fight this election with one arm tied behind their back. Many opposition party leaders have been threatened with arrest warrants, legal notices in connection with cases, both current cases and historic cases. For example, at the start of this month, on the 5th of April, an arrest warrant was issued for the chief minister of one of India's largest states, Bihar, in regards to a case, an alleged defense arms dealing case that goes back 30 years ago, a few weeks before election. India's income tax department froze the bank accounts of one of the leading opposition parties, the Grand Old Party of India, the Congress Party, effectively leaving them cash strapped as they go into a general election. And last but not the least, the Chief Minister of the national capital, New Delhi, where we're reporting out of right now, is currently in jail on the eve of a general election, leaving the opposition party, the Aam Aadmi Party, effectively headless as they go into this general election. So in a month from now, we should know which narrative the people of India have chosen to believe.
Right, and what are the main issues on voters' minds as they head into this vote?
Well, Prime Minister Modi's BJP party says that they are fighting this election on the issues of development, economic growth, the nationalistic pride. At the start of this year, the BJP delivered on a promise of building a grand Hindu temple on a once disputed site in Ayodhya. The opposition points out that the BJP has just announced very generous welfare schemes that promise free grains to at least 800 million of the poorest of Indian families, a generous stipend of about £14 a month to women from low-income groups. The main opposition to the BJP is a coalition of political parties that calls itself the India Bloc, and they say the real issue in this election is that India's democratic and secular setup is being challenged. They want to keep the focus away from nationalistic and religious issues and on the issues of unemployment and poverty and also corruption. Just a few weeks before this election, one of the leading newspapers, the Indian Express, did an investigative story where they tracked cases against 25 politicians over the last 10 years, corruption cases against 25 politicians, corruption cases that the BJP had been pointing out that these politicians faced. And today we see ahead of this election that these 25 politicians who have moved over from their parties to the BJP have suddenly found that these corruption cases against them have just magically run into a wall or gone into cold storage. So it's interesting times in India right now.
All right, Sarah, and you'll no doubt be keeping us updated as this general election plays out. Thank you, Sarah Jacob in New Delhi. The United Arab Emirates is attempting to dry out after record rainfall led to flash flooding. The freak weather caused flight delays and complicated access to Dubai International Airport, the world's busiest airfield for international travel. By the end of Tuesday, more than 142 millimeters of rainfall had soaked the capital over 24 hours. That's well above the yearly average, which is 95 millimeters of rain around Dubai Airport. Deluges were also seen in Bahrain, Qatar, and Saudi Arabia, plus Oman, where at least 19 people were killed. Whistleblowers have painted an alarming picture of safety culture and manufacturing quality at aviation giant Boeing, testifying during a US Senate hearing. The plane maker has been in crisis since the January mid-air panel blowout on a near-new 737 MAX 9. Passengers escaped serious injury, but the incident led to flight cancellations and renewed scrutiny. Boeing acknowledged imperfections but said it was making progress. Whistleblower Sam Salepour told lawmakers he was punished after raising safety concerns and told to, quote, shut up. He alleges alarming manufacturing shortcuts.
When you are operating at 35,000 feet, details are that the size of a human hair can be a matter of life and death. In a rush to address its bottlenecks in production, Boeing hit problems, pushing pieces together with excessive force to make them appear that the gaps don't exist even though they exist. The gap didn't actually go away, and this may result in premature fatigue failure. Effectively, they are putting out defective airplanes.
If you're just joining us, here's a reminder about top headlines this hour. The European Union says it will impose new sanctions on Iran after its unprecedented air assault on Israel over the weekend, specifically targeting drone and missile manufacturers. The bloc also urged all sides to show restraint after Israel vowed to respond to the onslaught. And the US House of Representatives will go to a long-awaited vote on aid for Ukraine, Israel, and the Indo-Pacific by Saturday, according to Republican Speaker Mike Johnson, a move that could provide $95 billion in critical support to the countries. And it's time now for today's Focus Reports. We're delving into the world of deepfakes, and in particular, deepfake pornography. They've been weaponized against prominent women like Taylor Swift, but they're also being used to target ordinary people and even children. Cheap apps and websites that allow you to remove somebody's clothes have become increasingly accessible at a time when teens and tweens are spending more and more time online. This is all leading to a proliferation of deepfake attacks on teenage girls. Jessica Le Masurier has this story about a young woman who, with the help of her mother, is trying to fight back.
Francesca Mani has found herself facing an invisible opponent.
From being a great regional channel to become an international channel. Congratulations, Sim.
This is Asia Now.
Hello there, it's 12 p.m. in Singapore and Hong Kong, 9:30 in New Delhi and 11 o'clock in Jakarta. I'm Shahida Osman. At this hour, the foreign ministers of China and Indonesia hold talks in Jakarta, with both sides agreeing to strengthen cooperation and bilateral relations. The meeting comes just weeks after Indonesia's leader Prabowo Subianto's visit to Beijing. Campaigning for the first phase of India's general elections concludes as Prime Minister Narendra Modi seeks a third straight term in power. Voters will head to the polls tomorrow. And the UAE begins a major cleanup operation after unprecedented heavy rain batters the Gulf states, disrupting flights at the world's second busiest airport. Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Yi says China and Indonesia want to maintain peace and stability in the region. Beijing's top diplomat is in Indonesia today for talks on bilateral ties. And both sides have signed a memorandum of understanding to establish high-level meetings to review and coordinate their cooperation every year. The meeting comes after Indonesian President-elect Prabowo Subianto's trip to Beijing earlier this month. Chinese leader Xi Jinping praised the visit and laid out a vision for regional peace. And Chani Bhavani joins us live now from Jakarta. Chani, the two foreign ministers, they have just met. What is the significance of this visit by Wang Yi to the Southeast Asian country?
Well, Shah, the two had talks on bilateral ties, as you rightly pointed out, and they discussed a number of things. And after the meeting, both foreign ministers were in agreement on maintaining peace and stability in the region. Mr. Wang, in his statement, also said that both ministers expressed resentment over the humanitarian disaster due to the Palestine-Israel conflict, and that they agree that the UN Security Council resolution on a ceasefire must be fully implemented and without any condition. Now, he said this via in his speech that was translated into Bahasa Indonesia. And after the bilateral meeting, Minister Retno said that Indonesia and China would strengthen relations, and that Indonesia was looking to further cooperation and investment in energy transition, infrastructure, and the downstreaming industry. Now, as for the Chinese foreign minister's purpose of visit itself, the Chinese Foreign Affairs Ministry wrote on its official website that the foreign minister will chair the 4th meeting of the China-Indonesia High-Level Dialogue Cooperation Mechanism. And to go back to the start, in 2021, Indonesia and China signed an MOU to establish a high-level dialogue. Now, under this pact, both countries agreed to hold high-level meetings to review and coordinate their cooperation once a year. And last year's meeting took place in Beijing.
So both countries appearing to be actively seeking closer ties with each other, Chani. But what's driving this push for deeper relations?
Well, China's foreign ministry spokesperson in a press conference earlier this week said that China is looking to implement important and common understandings that have been reached between President Xi Jinping and the leaders of the three countries that he is visiting during this trip. That's Indonesia, Cambodia, and Papua New Guinea. Now, the spokesperson also said that China is looking forward to conducting high-quality Belt and Road cooperation and pursuing deeper ties in what he called more substantive progress in the building of the community with a shared future. Now, after meeting Foreign Minister Retno Marsudi, Minister Wang Yi visited President Joko Widodo at the presidential palace here in Jakarta. We know that China is a major economic partner of Indonesia. It is also one of the biggest sources of FDI, foreign direct investment, and we know that Indonesia considers its ties to China very important. We recently saw, as you mentioned earlier as well, President-elect Prabowo Subianto paying a visit to China as well in his first overseas trip. So we are certainly seeing a deepening of ties between the two countries that's in mutual interest, which is what both countries want.
All right, good to hear from you, Chani. Thank you so much for that. Chani Bhavani there, live in Jakarta. Campaigning has ended for the first phase of elections in India, in which Prime Minister Narendra Modi is seeking a third straight term in office. The marathon 6-week election in the world's biggest democracy begins tomorrow, when people in more than 100 constituencies will cast their vote. Surveys are showing that Mr. Modi is widely expected to return to power. He has set a target of 370 seats for the BJP and 400 plus for the National Democratic Alliance that it heads in the 545-member lower house of parliament.
अगर कांग्रेस को आपने एक भी वोट दिया, कम्युनिस्टों को एक भी वोट दिया, तो केंद्र में सरकार नहीं बना सकता, आपका वोट बेकार जाएगा। और इसलिए आपका वोट बीजेपी की सरकार बनाएगा, ये गारंटी है।
Mr. Modi is being challenged by a bloc of about 24 parties that includes the main opposition party, Congress. The alliance has accused the government of using law enforcement agencies to selectively target its leaders. The Congress says BJP will lose in a free and fair election.
अगर इस देश में आज के दिन ऐसा चुनाव हो जिसमें कोई गड़बड़ी नहीं हो, जिसमें ईवीएम में कोई गड़बड़ी नहीं है, तो मैं दावे के साथ कह सकती हूं 180 से ज्यादा सीट नहीं ले सकते, उससे भी कम नहीं।
Opinion polls suggest that Mr. Modi remains popular in the country after a decade in power. If he does win this election, he will become only the second leader after India's first Prime Minister, Jawaharlal Nehru, to secure a third straight term. Neha Punya takes a look at what makes Mr. Modi the political phenomenon he is today.
Crowds waiting to catch a glimpse of the man who's hoping to script history. His support base is diverse and passionate. These are scenes that have greeted Modi at nearly every rally for 10 years now. Experts say he's built a cult-like following, support he's counting on to comfortably cross the finish line for that record third term.
We must remember that elections in India have become presidential in nature. So people identify with one leader, preferably a strong leader.
It's why first-time BJP candidate Praveen Khandelwal is marketing himself in these elections, but pitching Modi to voters while on the campaign trail. Even when you step away from Khandelwal's campaign trail, it's hard to miss the election fervour that has now gripped all of Chandni Chowk, where he's contesting from. In the winding lanes of this cramped but iconic market, shop after shop is hoping to cash in on the 2-month-long election season. And even here, Modi is omnipresent. At Sanjay Khaturia's shop, Modi merchandise is flying off the shelves. Voters are queuing up to show support for their favourite political candidate. But one face stands out.
कल आप देख रहे हैं तो मोदी जी की पॉपुलैरिटी इस टाइम ज़्यादा चल रही है, वो भी इसलिए चल रही है क्योंकि उनकी जो टीम है वो संगठित है, बाकी जो ग्रुप्स हैं वो इकट्ठे हो गए हैं, तो इस चीज़ का बहुत फर्क पड़ता है। आप अकेले अपने दम पे हो और 10 जने मिलकर चल रहे हैं, उसमें कब फूट पड़ जाए उसको कोई कह नहीं सकते।
Experts agree that Modi has been successful in doing something the opposition has not, creating the perception of a strong, capable leader.
He'll often describe himself as a visionary, someone who works round the clock for the people. At rallies, he'll remind voters that he's risen from the depths of poverty to serve the nation and that he has no family, so he cannot possibly promote nepotism. And everywhere you go, you're also always reminded of Narendra Modi. His posters are everywhere, and it's hard to forget that this man is central to the Indian election.
One survey put Modi's approval ratings at 78%, higher than that of any other leader globally. And he's remained popular through the last 10 years. For many of his supporters, Modi's appeal is his personality and the fact that in a Hindu-dominated country, he embraces his faith openly.
ऐसी कोई चीज़ नहीं है जो उनके अंदर हमें पसंद नहीं आती है। उनका बोलने का तरीका, हर विदेशी लोग जो उनका सम्मान करते हैं, हमारे को उनका सम्मान नहीं होता, वो कहते हैं हमारा सम्मान होता है। वाकई में ऐसा लगता है जैसे मेरा सम्मान हुआ।
देखिए, सनातन धर्म को लेकर मोदी जी की आस्था है और उसी आस्था से हम लोग जुड़े हुए हैं और धर्म के प्रति उनकी निष्ठा इतनी है कि आप देख ही सकते हैं कि वो भोले भक्त के भोले के बहुत बड़े पुजारी है। उनको आशीर्वाद मिला है, जब उनको जनाधार मिला है। जनाधार की वजह से आज वो जो भी काम कर रहे हैं देश के लिए, देश का सम्मान के लिए, देश के गौरव के लिए, देश को आगे बढ़ाने के लिए, आज जो भी कुछ भी देख रहे हैं आप, मोदी सरकार की गारंटी है, चाहे वो कांग्रेस का हो चाहे कुछ।
Prime Minister Modi's crackdown on alleged corruption has led to allegations of him misusing state machinery to intimidate and arrest opposition leaders. Rival parties have accused the government of targeting only those from opposition parties, a charge the BJP denies. Modi's critics argue another 5 years in power could put India's democratic credentials further at risk and make Modi's rule even more authoritarian. But for millions of supporters of the Prime Minister, Modi is India. His party claims during Modi's premiership the country has evolved on the international stage to become a presence to be reckoned with by other world powers. Some of his fans say he's raised the confidence of Indians as a people, and they believe India's rise will depend on Modi staying in power. Neha Punia, CNA, New Delhi.
And Henry Yin is back with the business update. Henry, tensions building up yet again in US-China relations?
That's right, Shah. US President Joe Biden takes aim at China as he pushes to increase tariffs on steel and aluminium. Plus,
I literally saw people jumping on the pieces of the airplane to get them to align. I call it the Tarzan effect.
a Boeing whistleblower says his supervisors threatened him after he raised concerns about the assembly process of two jets, allegations the company has denied. The playmaker's safety culture is under scrutiny at dual Senate hearings.
Amid a global push to pivot away from fossil fuels, countries in the Gulf have found opportunity in economic diversity.
They put the oil money into good use, investments using oil revenues.
To develop new engines of growth, the Gulf states have gone all out to attract the right talent to help build new capabilities.
We take home pay precisely like how much they put in the
Alongside several African countries, Kenya has become the latest country to recall a batch of the pharmaceutical company Johnson & Johnson's children's cough syrup. Kenya's Pharmacy and Poisons Board, PPB, directed pharmaceutical outlets countrywide to stop the distribution of the brand after its Nigerian counterpart recalled the drug over safety issues.
In this case of the Benylin pediatric syrup, the Nigerian authority, which is called NAFDAC, did a sampling of the medicine in Nigerian market. And then they found that medicine to be of poor quality. It was the impurity levels for diethylene glycol was higher than expected. So they mandated what we call a recall of that product in Nigerian market.
Following recent toxicity findings, many nations have expressed concerns over Benylin Pediatric. Kenya's regulatory board says it has assessed the other units from 3 other batches. It comes after 11,184 units of the batch were found to be toxic.
We followed it up with the local technical agent in the country who imported those products. We told them to give us the distribution list and immediately quarantine all Benylin related products. At the same time, we started sampling all other batches that were already in the country. We looked at how much they were. They were actually in total about 44,000.
Consuming diethylene glycol can result in acute kidney failure. The substance has been linked to the deaths of dozens of children in Gambia, Uzbekistan and Cameroon since 2022.
Hundreds of Kenyan doctors and other medical practitioners protested on Tuesday demanding better pay and working conditions in an ongoing nationwide strike that has entered its 5th week. Florence, the cancer patient, visited Kenya's referral hospital on Tuesday morning, hoping she would get treatment for her worsening leg, but was left unattended. We have not got any treatment. We have waited for a long time and we just had to leave without any medication. The doctors chanted against the Kenyan government, saying it had failed to implement a raft of promises, including a collective bargaining agreement signed in 2017.
To bow to any forms of intimidation and threats, and we're hereby saying today that we're going to continue picketing, we're going to continue to exercise our constitutional rights as per Article 37 of the Constitution. We have already filed our petition to Parliament to review our grievances.
Another medic involved in the protests highlighted the dire situation faced by patients, particularly those suffering from conditions like cancer.
We are the ones in the hospital every single day. We are the ones who see that patient who is suffering from cancer, and now they do not have any form of chemotherapy, they do not have radiotherapy. So we feel really bad. We feel very empathetic. We are very sad. But now, what we are fighting for better healthcare, and it is better healthcare even for those patients.
The strike has left many patients without access to essential medical services, exacerbating their conditions and causing distress. Abdullahi Bathily, the Special Representative of Secretary General for Libya and head of the United Nations Support Mission in Libya, announced on Tuesday that he has submitted his resignation to Secretary General Antonio Guterres. Guterres cited the challenging circumstances surrounding his mediation efforts.
Since I invited the 5 key Libyan stakeholders for a dialogue to resolve all contested issues pertaining to the electoral laws and the formation of a unified government, I have escalated my engagement with them and proposed ways to concerns while maintaining the integrity of a dialogue initiative I originally proposed.
Batley expressed his frustration over the failure to reach political settlement among Libyan leaders based on negotiations and compromise.
Libyan leaders must reach a political settlement based on negotiations and compromise. We cannot allow the aspirations of 2.8 million of registered Libyan voters to be overshadowed by the narrow interests of a few. I call on the Council to heed their legitimate dream.
The resignation of Batley raises questions about the future of UN mediation efforts in Libya and the ongoing quest for political stability in the war-torn nation.
Former defender Ivan Dika was released from hospital on Monday, a day after he collapsed at the end of a Serie A match. The Ivorian international appeared to have suffered a collapsed left lung, Roma said in a statement on Monday. No cardiac issues were detected in multiple tests on Monday morning, and Dika was discharged from the hospital, the club added. Dika fell to the ground in the 71st minute, far from the action, and started pointing at his chest. He never lost consciousness and was taken off on a stretcher 2 minutes later, giving a thumb up to the crowd. But the game between Roma and Udinese at 1-1 was abandoned.
Tonight, breaking news, the tornado outbreak and severe storms. Workers in one state capital racing to the basement. This is moving east at this hour. Also breaking tonight, the impeachment effort for Homeland Security Secretary Alejandro Mayorkas. The effort collapsing within hours of reaching the Senate. And tonight, the NBA player banned from the sport for life. First tonight, the tornado watch is up right now. Severe thunderstorms, damaging winds, and hail. Oh my God! 16 confirmed tornadoes across multiple states tonight. Tornado sirens sending people to take shelter. This system moving into the Northeast. Rob Marciano has the track of these storms. The breaking news from Capitol Hill, the impeachment trial of Homeland Security Secretary Mayorkas, ending just hours after reaching the Senate. And the developing headline involving Speaker Mike Johnson tonight in the House, with votes now coming on aid for Israel and Ukraine. What about the Speaker's future? Rachel Scott live on the Hill. Also the breaking headline at this hour involving issue of abortion. Arizona's 160-year-old abortion ban, one of the strictest laws in the country, will move forward. Republicans in that state blocking the effort today to repeal the ban before it takes effect. Tonight, the testimony from Boeing employees, past and present, sounding the alarm about safety issues. One whistleblower saying he saw workers literally jumping on pieces of a plane to get it to a line. Tonight, the Iranian-backed Hezbollah attacking Israel in the north. Prime Minister Netanyahu, his first public comments since Iran's direct attack on Israel. And tonight, what ABC News has now learned about two separate moments when Israel was set to retaliate against Iran, but then stopped. Matt Guffin reporting. Back here in the U.S., tonight, authorities confirming they have found the bodies of two missing mothers on their way to pick up children for a birthday party. Tonight, authorities on the four suspects, including one of the children's grandmothers. President Biden in his home state of Pennsylvania tonight, a state he'll need to win re-election. What he said about the economy and about jobs created in that state. In upstate New York, the video tonight, a deadly police shootout during a traffic stop in Albany. The officers wounded in the ambush. Tonight, the NBA player now banned from the sport for life and why. The object that crashed into a home in Florida. Tonight, NASA now confirming what that object was and where it came from. And America Strong tonight, what happened at the Plaza Hotel right here in New York. It was definitely on point.
From ABC News World Headquarters in New York, this is World News Tonight with David Muir.
Good evening. It's great to have you with us here on a Wednesday night. We do begin tonight with the severe storms moving east and the tornado watches as we come on the air tonight. Severe thunderstorms, damaging winds and hail, 16 confirmed tornadoes across multiple states tonight. Billions now bracing in the path this evening. Severe storms already hammering the upper Midwest and Ohio Valley, heading across the Great Lakes and into the Northeast, with a new storm then moving into the heartland. Storm chasers capturing video of this massive twister forming in Houghton, Iowa, and EF2 with winds more than 110 miles an hour. Those storm chasers finding themselves inside the swirling winds, their vehicle right there in the middle of the blowing debris. And in nearby New London, Iowa, look at this tonight, a home destroyed by the winds, neighbors there showing up to help today. Tonight, the system moving east with a new storm already brewing. Senior meteorologist Rob Marciano leading us off, tracking it all tonight.
Tonight, an outbreak of powerful storms barreling east, targeting millions for a third straight night. High winds and torrential rain hammering Detroit's airport. Tornado sirens sounding in Michigan's capital. The warnings forcing House lawmakers to take shelter in the basement for a time. More than 100 damaging storm reports in the last 24 hours. Storm chasers north of Houghton, Iowa, practically engulfed by a forming tornado. Oh my God! Then riding alongside it as it regenerates into a monster EF2 wedge. Winds of over 110 miles per hour. Not far from there in New London, devastating damage to multiple homes. Residents coming from miles around to help clean up. And just north of Kansas City in Smithville, Missouri, families cleaning up after a 95-mile-per-hour EF1 tornado ripped off roofs and upended Kevin Kemp's whole life. It's just a gut punch to know that, this is all I had. A new system threatening the same area again tonight.
So let's get right to Rob Marciano with the latest track of these storms on the move again this evening. Rob, take us through it.
All right, David, well, we've got the leading edge of this first one coming through right now, and it has not lost its punch over 3 days. Right now, eastern Ohio, West Virginia, and western Pennsylvania under the gun. That's where that tornado watch is. We've had a number of tornadic warning cells there. One is heading towards Pittsburgh. Look out for you in the next 30 to 40 minutes. That will die off after midnight. Next one dropping into the plains. Severe storms, heavy wind, big-time hail coming through the areas from Omaha to Kansas City that got hit with tornadoes yesterday. But the biggest risk tomorrow for severe weather, Waco, Dallas, up through Evansville, Indiana, and right there in the heartland. That's the highest tornado threat late in the day through tomorrow night. Likely to be our fourth night in a row of seeing tornadic storms. David?
Rob Marciano back with us tonight. Rob, thank you. We are also tracking the breaking news on Capitol Hill late today, the impeachment effort by Republicans involving following Homeland Security Secretary Alejandro Mayorkas failing just hours after arriving in the Senate. So let's get right to ABC's Rachel Scott. She's live up on the Hill again tonight. This effort did not survive very long once it reached the Senate, Rachel.
No, David. In fact, this Republican effort to try to convict Homeland Security Secretary Alejandro Mayorkas went down in less than 3 hours. Democrats quickly dismissing those charges before this trial even fully got underway. House Republicans impeached Mayorkas over his handling of the border, but failed to provide any evidence of high crimes and misdemeanors. Democrats argue that President Biden was ready to sign the most significant bipartisan border security legislation in decades, but it was Republicans who rejected a bill their own party negotiated under immense pressure from former President Donald Trump. Tonight, the White House insisting Republicans should stop playing baseless political games, David.
Rachel, the other story, the other developing headline from the Hill, Speaker Mike Johnson and House Republicans moving forward with votes now coming on aid for both Israel and aid for Ukraine as well. But Speaker Johnson, knowing his push to vote on all this, could actually put his own future in jeopardy. So where does all this stand, Sal?
And David, just moments ago, the Speaker of the House was asked why he believes it's worth risking his job to provide additional aid to Ukraine, and he said because it's the right thing to do. So he is moving forward with this complicated plan to bring that $95 billion package that was passed in the Senate with aid for Israel, Ukraine, and Taiwan, and separated into 4 different bills. We are expecting votes on that in the House by the end of the week. And as for this push to try to oust him as Speaker, it's unclear when or if those Republicans are going to make good on those threats, David.
Rachel Scott following all for us. Rachel, we sure do appreciate it. The major headline tonight involving the issue of abortion as well. In Arizona tonight, the near total ban on abortion dating back to the Civil War, before women had the right to vote, before Arizona was even a state. This ban will move forward. Republicans in that state today blocking efforts to repeal it. ABC's Elizabeth Schulze from Phoenix tonight.
Tonight, Arizona Republican lawmakers refusing to repeal one of the toughest abortion laws in the country, a law written during the Civil War more than 160 years ago, banning abortion in all cases except to save the life of the mother.
The last thing we should be doing today is rushing a bill through the legislative process.
Democrats outraged.
We're talking about a bill that was passed before Arizona was even a state, before women had the right to vote.
But Republican lawmakers tonight defending the law.
We have the best law possible on the books right now.
The 1864 law is the best law possible.
Yes.
A law that makes abortion impossible for women in every circumstance except for to save a mother's life.
Arizona is a pro-life state, and that law was put into place by people that believe in the sanctity of life.
Arizona, one of 21 states to ban or severely restrict abortion since the Supreme Court overturned Roe v. Wade. Donald Trump has boasted of nominating 3 of the 5 justices who overturned Roe.
We broke Roe v. Wade, and we did something that nobody thought was possible. We gave it back to the states, and the states are working very brilliantly.
Still, Trump says Arizona went too far. He knows that voters will likely have the last word on the matter. Arizona, one of 14 states where abortion could be on the ballot this fall. Abortion rights has won wherever it's gone before voters, including in conservative states like Kansas, Kentucky, and Ohio. Today, Republican lawmakers told me they're not worried.
Voters are smart. They would rather vote for somebody that they respect and disagree with than somebody who doesn't believe in anything.
David, Arizona is, of course, a key battleground in the presidential election, but it is not just the candidates on the ballot. Arizona, again, one of 14 states where voters are expected to decide on abortion. We know in the past when it's on the ballot, turnout has gone up, and in every instance, the abortion rights position has won. David?
It will be a major issue this November, along with the presidential race, indeed. Elizabeth, thank you. Tonight, the testimony from Boeing employees, past and present, sounding the alarm about safety issues they say at Boeing. One whistleblower today saying he saw workers literally jumping on pieces of a plane to get it to align. Tonight, Boeing fiercely denying the claims. Gio Benitez covers aviation, and he's on the Hill tonight.
Tonight, Boeing scrutinized on Capitol Hill, the company under fire for months after that door plug flew off a Boeing 737 MAX 9 at 16,000 feet.
I have serious concerns about the safety of the 787 and 777 aircraft.
Whistleblower Sam Salapur, an engineer who's worked with Boeing for 17 years, alleging that 787 Dreamliners are at risk of breaking apart in midair after extensive use because he says the fuselage isn't fastened together properly.
I have raised these issues over 3 years. I was ignored.
Salapur was eventually moved from the 787 program to the 777, where he says he saw more issues.
I literally saw people jumping on the pieces of the airplane to get them to align.
But during the hearing, the whistleblower provided no evidence to support his claims. Boeing halted 787 deliveries for nearly 2 years to address these issues. The FAA signed off on the fixes. The company standing behind its fleet, saying a 787 can safely operate for at least 30 years before needing expanded airframe maintenance routines. Extensive and rigorous testing of the fuselage and heavy maintenance checks of nearly 700 in-service airplanes to date have found zero evidence of airframe fatigue, and that they are fully confident in the 777, which has safely flown more than 3.9 billion passengers around the world. Boeing has been pushing back hard against these claims, saying that these aircraft are safe. Do you believe them?
The aircraft as a whole may be safe insofar as people getting on planes shouldn't panic, but they need to be made fully safe.
And David, that whistleblower first went to the FAA in January with his concerns. The FAA tells us it is investigating those allegations.
David, Gio Benitez at the Capitol tonight. Gio, thank you. In Israel tonight, the Iranian-backed Hezbollah striking Israel from the north. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu making his first public comments since Iran's direct attack on Israel. And tonight, what sources are telling ABC News about 2 separate moments since that Iranian attack, when Israel was set to retaliate against Iran, but then stopped. Matt Gutman in Israel again tonight.
Tonight, with Israel bound to retaliate against Iran, tensions ratcheting higher as the Iranian-backed group Hezbollah launched this attack on an Israeli military base in northern Israel. The drones crashing into this village, then that fireball. Hezbollah releasing this video, POV of drone in that death dive. 18 wounded, including 14 Israeli soldiers. And as the world waits to see how Israel responds to Iran, sources telling ABC News that on at least 2 nights this week, Israel prepared, then aborted retaliatory strikes against Iran. And in his first public comment since Iran's massive missile attack Saturday, a defiant Prime Minister Netanyahu signaling Israel will do everything necessary to defend itself. And tonight, Israel's president revealing new video from October 7th to remind the world that there are still hostages being held by Hamas. You see the kidnapping of Yarden Bibas, the father of the 2 youngest children abducted by Hamas. He's terrified and bloodied. These gripping images of his children, those red-headed toddlers, clutched in their mother's arms as they were taken. And in Gaza, where those hostages are still being held, the Israeli military continuing its relentless assault, striking multiple targets in in southern Gaza, body bags lining the sand, dozens reported killed over the last 24 hours, including at least 4 children.
And Iran tonight vowing a fierce response to any Israeli retaliation. And David, Israeli and U.S. sources telling us tonight that at this point, if Israel decides to retaliate, it's unlikely to do so until after the Passover holiday is over at the end of the month. David.
Back up in Tel Aviv again tonight. Thanks, Matt. Back in the U.S. tonight, authorities confirming they have found the bodies of 2 missing mothers. This evening, authorities now on the 4 suspects they say are at the center of this plot, including one of the grandmothers. Here's ABC's Maria Villarreal.
In Oklahoma today, the first court appearance for 4 suspects accused of kidnapping and murdering 2 mothers who vanished on their way to pick up children for a birthday party.
It's very sad.
Those 2 ladies should still be here with their kids. Investigators say the children's grandmother was at the center of a plot to kill her former daughter-in-law, Veronica Butler, after a long fight for custody of the children. Today, the victim's family lashing out at those suspects in court.
So much anger, frustration. How can you hate the mother of your grandchildren so much that you want to end her life?
Veronica Butler and Jillian Kelly were driving from Kansas to pick up Butler's kids for that birthday party. Kelly riding along to supervise a court-ordered visitation. Police finding their car abandoned with blood and a broken hammer nearby. Their bodies found 2 weeks later.
This case did not end the way we had hoped. It has certainly been a tragedy for everybody involved.
Tonight, Veronica Butler's family heartbroken.
Everybody needs to know how great of a mom she was, because there should have been no reason why she had to have that custody battle for so long.
And David, reporters in that Oklahoma courtroom actually say that the father of Veronica Butler had to be held back. He was so full of anger and rage as he watched those suspects get charged in his daughter's murder. David?
Maria Villarreal tonight. Thank you, Maria. We turn now to the race for the White House. President Biden in his home state of Pennsylvania again tonight, a state he'll need to win this November. Biden aiming to draw the contrast between him and Donald Trump, who has spent much of this week in court. Here's Mary Bruce.
Tonight, fully aware that Donald Trump's attention is focused on his criminal trial in New York, President Biden lasering in on battleground Pennsylvania. Speaking to steelworkers, Biden touting his work on the economy and taking swipes at his opponent.
492,000 new jobs so far in Pennsylvania alone. Under my predecessor, who's busy right now, Pennsylvania lost 275,000 jobs. I mean, let's look at the facts. On my watch, unemployment hasn't been this low for this long in 50 years.
Biden's leaning into his working class roots on a 3-day swing through this must-win state, greeting construction workers in Pittsburgh, and visiting his childhood home in Scranton, where he told voters he understands them in a way Trump never will.
Donald Trump looks at the world differently than you and me. He wakes up in the morning in Mar-a-Lago thinking about himself.
The president, well aware that the polls are tightening and that he is gaining ground, has spent more time in Pennsylvania than any other battleground. By our count, visiting the state more than 30 times since taking office. David.
Mary Bruce, who was in Pennsylvania, now back in Washington for us. Mary, thank you. And when we come back tonight in upstate New York, a deadly shootout. The police ambushed. And the NBA player tonight banned from the sport for life. And why? Tonight, a deadly police shootout in Albany, New York. Authorities saying an officer was ambushed during an attempted traffic stop. Body camera video showing the officer shot and wounded while approaching the driver's car. The officer returning fire, killing the suspect. When we come back here tonight, the NBA player this evening banned from the sport. And this is something, the object crashing into a home. And tonight, NASA now confirming where it came from. To the index tonight, and the Toronto Raptors' Jonte Porter has been banned from the sport for life because of a gambling scandal. An NBA investigation finding he bet on at least 13 NBA games, gave confidential information to bettors, and bet on his own team to lose. Tonight, the object that smashed into a home in Naples, Florida. NASA now says it was a piece of metal space junk from the International Space Station, released actually 3 years ago. It was just last month, the homeowner says the object the size of someone's fist slammed through the roof and 2 floors of the home. When we come back here tonight, what happened at the famed Plaza Hotel right here in New York? Could they set a record? Bonnie tonight here, the ballet dancers and their technique. America Strong. Tonight in New York City at the famed Plaza Hotel on 5th Avenue, an incredible sight. 500 ballerinas from across the country coming together, and all for a good cause. Raising awareness for the nonprofit Youth America Grand Prix, a ballet scholarship program helping dancers across America. All of the dancers getting ready to simultaneously perform that famous ballet move, dancing on point on their tiptoes, all together for 60 seconds straight. Ages 9 to 19 tying their ballet shoes, each with their own number, and then the countdown.
3, 2, 1, go!
Their hands in the air, Tchaikovsky playing, smiling the entire time, on their tiptoes for 1 minute.
3, 2, 1!
They did it. Right here tonight.
Hi, David. Hello, David. Hello, David. Hi, David.
10-year-old Adriana.
It was just a really special moment.
14-year-old Kaya.
It was a proud moment for all of us ballet dancers.
10-year-old Jennifer.
I have never broken a record before, and it was really exciting.
And 10-year-old Elendi.
I enjoyed just being on with the dancers.
It was a beautiful moment. Their talent on full display. I'll see you tomorrow. Good night.
Thank you for making World News Tonight with David Moore, America's most watched newscast.
Thank you for watching and privilege of your time. This is Amir Shakil 5858. I am Amir Woodman. Have a good life.